You must have strong feelings about current events and politics generally, given your experience, yet you remain silent on this issue. Why? To appeal to a larger audience or the soldier's mentality of not criticizing the commander-in-chief? Is that why?
Do I have strong feelings on current events and politics? Sure, I do. But they're more broad. So I have very strong, broad feelings on current events and politics. I am a patriotic person. I believe very strongly in individual freedoms of human beings. I believe in having a very strong military. I believe in having a small government. So I have strong feelings about those things. However, I don't have strong feelings about the nonsense and micro dramas that are on the 24-hour news cycle that are just and social media, just constant things. And we talked about this last podcast, things that don't matter. Mm-hmm. So much of the current events don't really matter in the big picture to me or even to the country. And, you know, I was on Ben Shapiro's show. And, you know, I basically said, look, like overall Americans have sort of the same goals. And he said, I don't know if I believe that. And I said, well, I work with all kinds of companies, with people all over the country. And the people that a guy like Ben Shapiro hears from, he's just bombarded by the extremes on both sides 24 hours a day. Mm. I don't want to be in that position of getting bombarded by these extremes 24 hours a day. I said, Ben, you're right. There are some people in the country that believe the far left or the far right. I said, most people are concerned about their life and doing a good job and, you know, building their business or, you know, paying down their mortgage. That's what they're concerned about. And so they're not like freaking out about every little micro drama that gets unleashed into the press and social media every single day. And so why do I not join into that? Because I don't want to join into that. And also, I don't want to make a podcast. I don't want to spend all my time making a podcast that's out of date the day it comes out. Like I don't want to invest my time in that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to. And guess what? There's literally giant multi-billion-dollar news media outlets, and guess what they do? That's what they do all day. That's what they do all day. They make a story about this thing and that thing and this thing. I can't react fast enough. It's just dumb. So if we were to be talking about current events, then by the time the podcast comes out, the current event has been over. Some people are listening to this podcast and it's 2022 right now. Right now. Someone is listening to this podcast right now and it's 2022. No, there's no topic of current events that we could talk about, or barely any, that actually impact what's happening 4 years from now. I meet people every day now. I meet people that say, hey, oh man, I've been listening to your podcast. I'm on 28. That's 2 years ago, right? That's 2 years ago. What was the current events 2 years ago? It's totally different than they are now. Yeah. So there's that. So that's why a little current events thing. As far as appealing to a larger audience, that part of the question, well, if my goal was to appeal to a larger audience, then I think I actually would talk about the trendy stories of the day and put out little clips of sound bites of all this stuff. And instead of doing what I do now, which is to read 100-year-old out-of-print books, like that's a great way to build an audience. Or let's talk about the Rwandan genocide, or let's talk about the Holocaust, or let's talk about the rape of Nanking, or let's talk about the My Lai massacre. That ought to build a great audience. So the idea that, I'm trying to build a larger audience, it's like, no, actually, people that want to listen to this want to listen to it. I'm not trying to build an audience by manipulating what I'm thinking about. No, I'm talking about and I'm diving into what I find important and what I think I can learn from. And I get more out of this podcast than anybody. I mean, I know a lot of people say, I've gotten a lot from your podcast. I get more out of it than anybody because I get to dive deep into this stuff and really look at it. So, no, It's not them trying to appeal to a larger audience. In fact, if I wanted a larger audience, I'd do exactly what you're talking about. As far as the soldier's mentality of not criticizing the commander-in-chief, I actually don't agree. I don't agree that that's a soldier's mentality, and I don't believe that it should be a soldier's mentality. The soldier should question their leadership. And now, should they do it tactfully? Absolutely. Because I don't want to be surrounded by yes men. That's wrong. Also, what am I trying? This is just a general leadership principle. What have I said 1,000 times on this podcast? I'm trying to build a relationship with the person above me in the chain of command. So when I was in the military, if I wanted to have influence over my boss, over my commander in chief, would I outwardly criticize them and make them think, oh, this guy just doesn't like me? I'm going to take my first chance to get rid of him or not promote him. No, I'm actually going to play the game, and I'm going to look and say, okay, boss, hey, I see what you're doing here. I want to support what you're doing, but does this make sense? Could we do it a different way? So I'm trying to build a relationship with my boss up the chain of command. I'm not trying to ostracize him by making him look bad or by openly criticizing my boss in the open. Because what have I done? Is my boss going to listen to me? No. Actually, my boss isn't going to listen to me at all. So I don't want to be surrounded by yes men. But at the same time, if someone's making a bad decision, if someone's doing something that's immoral or illegal, I'll call them out on it all day long. Now, the other thing that happens here is this is a new world, and this is a binary world of sound bites. That's what we've done. We've created this binary world of sound bites. When most answers that you want to give as a human being aren't one sentence or two sentence on the far left or far right or far light or far dark. Like there's going to be, you have to explain things a little bit more. But when you take these binary sound bites, everyone's immediately thrown into an extreme category on the far left or the far right. And here's the bad part. Here's the really bad part. As soon as you get thrown into one of those camps, then the other camp stops listening to you completely. Yeah. They stop listening to you, anything you say. So you could make a great point, but if you're on the other side, doesn't matter. No one's listening. They don't want to hear it because you're on the other side. You're the enemy. It's a binary world. You're either with me or against me, and there's no in between. So that's kind of what we've created. And what I would rather do is have people actually listen to what I say broadly and make their own choices rather than me trying to force an opinion down their throat. This is the way it is. This is the way it should be. And by the way, just like leadership, you can't force an opinion down someone's throat. It doesn't work. You can't. Sure, it'll work for 30 seconds. It'll work for 5 minutes. It'll work for 5 days in a leadership position. Yeah, you better do what I say. My way is right. Eventually, that kind of leadership does not work. And it's the same thing with trying to force an opinion down someone's throat. If you listen to what I'm saying, you can form your own opinion. And I would rather have you do that because that's going to be stronger than some opinion that I tried to force down your throat, which doesn't work, by the way. So I would rather people listen to me and not just sound bites and see where I'm coming from holistically and see where they can agree and disagree and see what feedback they give me. Because, by the way, I could be wrong about something, which I have no problem with, but I would rather do that. I would rather have that approach than join the pack, whichever pack that is. Join the pack on the street and bark loudly like the rest of the dogs. I have no interest in doing that. So, there you go.
Agree. Dang, bro. Yeah, and it's funny, man. You're like one of the few people who, like that whole thing. I mean, to sum that up, I've heard that before, where someone would be like, "Hey, I'm like this," whatever. But it's so few people that actually do that the way you do, even in real life. Like you don't. Even when political stuff will come up, it's real obvious that you didn't jump into any specific group.
Yeah, so this really ties back to last week's podcast of getting involved in things that don't matter. Yeah. And there's just so much out there that doesn't matter. Now, where you have to be careful is that there's so many things that don't matter, but what I am not saying that little things don't matter. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? There's a huge disparity between those two things. There's a lot of things that don't matter. What I am not saying is that little things don't matter. Because there are little things that do matter. And the classic example that we brought up over and over and again on this podcast is like, oh, the Russian soldiers not shaving in Chechnya, and how that led to their eventually, okay, not going to shave. Now we're not going to clean our weapons. Now we're not going to stay awake on our watch. Now we're not going to execute the missions we're being told to do. Now we're getting beat. There are little things that matter. But if I'm barking all day long about things that don't matter, then we have a problem. We have a problem. Now I'll tell you something else. There's been some issues that have come up lately. There was one issue that I was going to address on the podcast, and I still might address it because it's a small problem that I see as being a more significant problem. And if it continues down the road, but luckily at this point, there's a whole pack of dogs barking about it. Yeah. It wasn't like I noticed this problem and no one else saw it. It was like I noticed this problem, so did millions of other people, and all those dogs start barking. Okay, so now what am I going to do? Bark with them?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now if there comes a time where all of a sudden I realize there's one of these small things that matter or big things that matter that I don't see getting the traction that it needs, well then I will absolutely say, hey, this is what I think about this situation. Generally, there's so many people barking, and they're barking about the same thing. They're barking about a lot of things that don't matter. They're barking about some things that matter. And right now, what do I say all the time? The less you speak, the more people listen.
Yeah.
So if I want to give my opinion on the daily news every hour on the hour, no one's listening to anything I've got to say. And then it's a waste. It's a waste of my time because there are more important things. When we can dive into human nature through the lens of war, through the lens of leadership, through the war of atrocity, if we can learn and teach people about the past so that we can prevent it from happening in the future, that to me is infinitely more impactful than barking about some current event that's happening that's going to be gone in a week. It's amazing how fast stuff comes up on the radar. It's all over the headlines, and in a week it's gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to play that game. I don't. There's no point in doing it.
Dang, that's a really good way to put it. It's like these current events most of the time seem to be shaped in a way to just for dogs to bark about, that's what it is, like here, and then they bark, and then next thing,
yeah,
okay, bark about this now.
The soundbite thing is really interesting too. Everything is a soundbite, and it either puts you in one camp or the other camp. And the fact of the matter is, you can't put me in a camp. You can't, because I got beliefs that you don't understand on one side, on the other side. And so you can't talk to me about that kind of thing. You can't, not that you can't talk to me, you can't put me in a camp, but the instinct of the world right now is take that person and put him in a camp. I'm not going in the camp. That's what's happening. If you want to figure out what I'm thinking, listen to what I'm saying in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours where I talk about human nature, right? If you want to figure that out and then you want to ask me a pointed question about something, cool, ask it, bring it. If it's something that's going to, if it's a bark, if you want me to bark about something, I'm probably not going to bark about it.
So what? Throwing you in a camp, all you'd have is a whole lot of unhappy campers?
No, you throw me in a camp. If you put me in one camp, the other camp doesn't listen anymore. And that means their minds are closed, so they're not going to. And the fact of the matter is, there's good people in both camps. And both people can change and can accept new ideas if their mind is open. If their mind isn't open, they're just stay in their camp. And everyone else. I mean, when you watch the extremes of either camp right now, it's like really? It's bizarro world.
Yeah, it's kind of odd, yeah.
So you just sit there and say, okay, why am I going to play that game? Let's just become better people that understand people better, and we'll make the world better.
Can't disagree.
Okay, check.
Yeah, the whole unhappy campers, that was me more making a joke. I dig it.
It was a good attempt at humor. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. It was a failure, but that's cool.
What was the other point you made? Sometimes it's better to just try, and and
Oh, the
see
humor
up.
thing?
Yeah. See what up. Now I know.
Yeah, now you know, don't try that again.
Yeah.
No more jokes from Echo Charles.
I've learned from my mistakes. Anyway,